my fiancé said. My ex is my maid of honor. No her, no wedding. I took a breath, smiled and said, then no wedding it is. I cancelled the venue, refunded every guest and sent him the invoice for my share. When his ex learned he'd be footing the bill instead of me, I finally toasted to freedom. I had already typed up the cancellation emails when Carrie announced his ultimatum about Lisa being his maid of honor. Something in his nervous energy at breakfast had warned me, so while he'd showered I'd opened my laptop and started drafting. Just in case. Grace, I need Lisa standing with me at the wedding. No her, no wedding, that's just how it is. My finger hovered over the send button for the Ritz-Carlton cancellation. $7,000 in deposits, but we had insurance. I looked up at him, this man I'd spent 3 years with, who was really going to make his ex-girlfriend the hill to die on. Okay, I said simply and clicked send. No wedding it is. The email confirmation popped up immediately. Your cancellation has been processed. Carrie's face went through 3 distinct expressions: smugness, confusion, then panic as he realized I wasn't bluffing. But let me back up 12 hours, to when I first sensed this disaster approaching. Before we dive deeper, if you believe women deserve partners who respect their boundaries, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps these important stories reach others. Now let's see what happened next. The previous evening I'd been sitting at our kitchen table, wedding binder spread open to the seating chart section, when Carrie's phone had buzzed for the 5th time in an hour. He'd snatched it up quickly, too quickly, angling the screen away from me. Work stuff, he'd muttered, but his ears had turned red, his tell since the day I met him. I'd returned to my seating chart, placing his college friends at table 7, when he'd cleared his throat. Hey, so I've been reconnecting with some old friends lately. My pen had paused over Great Aunt Martha's placement. Oh. Yeah, just, people from before. It's good to have closure on things before starting a new chapter. The word closure had lodged in my brain like a splinter. In my 5 years as a forensic accountant, I'd learned that when people start talking about closure, they're usually about to open something that should stay shut. That morning, I'd woken at 5:45 a.m. as usual, starting Carrie's Colombian coffee while he slept. His phone sat charging on the nightstand, screen lighting up with another text. LB flashed briefly before going dark. Lauren from his office was LP. His cousin Lindsay was saved as Lindsay. LB was new. I'd continued my morning routine, ironing his shirts, laying out his favorite breakfast, but my mind was already in forensic mode, piecing together fragments. The nervous energy. The late-night texts. The sudden interest in closure. When Carrie had stumbled into the kitchen at 7 a.m., I'd watched him check his phone immediately, his thumb moving quickly across the screen before he'd even said good morning to me. Big meeting today? I'd asked, sliding his coffee across the counter. What? Oh no. Just checking something. His ears. Red again. That's when I'd opened my laptop and started drafting the cancellation emails. Not because I knew what was coming. I couldn't have imagined he'd actually demand his ex-girlfriend be in our wedding party. But because my instincts, honed by years of following paper trails and spotting lies in financial documents, were screaming that something was about to implode. The Ritz-Carlton email was easy. We'd purchased wedding insurance at my insistence. Carrie had called it pessimistic, but I'd called it practical. The florist, photographer, caterers, I'd drafted them all, saving each as I went. $32,000 in vendor contracts, reduced to a folder of unsent emails labeled, just in case. When Carrie had gone to shower, humming off-key like he always did when he was anxious, I'd pulled up our joint expense spreadsheet. 8 months of wedding planning, every receipt logged and categorized. My forensic accounting reflexes had kicked in automatically, calculating his 50% share, factoring in deposits versus refundable amounts. By the time he'd emerged from the bathroom, hair still damp, wearing the shirt I'd ironed 2 hours earlier, I'd had everything ready. The cancellations drafted. The financial breakdown complete. All waiting for whatever bomb he was about to drop. And then he'd said it. Lisa Brennan. The woman who'd destroyed him 3 years ago, who'd stolen $40,000 from their joint account and vanished to Miami with his business partner. The woman he'd spent our entire first year together calling a manipulative sociopath, after his 3rd whiskey. That Lisa was going to be his maid of honor. She's changed, Grace. We've been talking and she's really grown as a person. She understands me in ways that, well, she needs to be there. It's important for my healing. Healing. There was that therapy speak he'd picked up from the self-help podcasts he'd started binging last month. Another red flag I'd noted but hadn't fully processed. And if I say no? I'd asked, though I'd already known the answer. Then there's no wedding. I need this, Grace. I need her there. The fascinating thing about ultimatums is that people who issue them never expect you to accept them. They expect negotiation, tears, compromise. They expect you to value the relationship more than your self-respect. They don't expect you to have already drafted the cancellation emails. As that first confirmation had popped up on my screen, I'd pulled up the second email. The photographer. Then the florist. Each click was like cutting a rope that had been slowly strangling me, though I hadn't realized how tight it had gotten until I started cutting. Grace, stop. What are you doing? We can talk about this. But I was already on email number 4, fingers flying across the keyboard, adding personal notes to each vendor about the irreconcilable differences discovered during planning. Professional. Clean. No drama. The catering company. The string quartet. The cake designer who'd spent 3 hours with us debating fondant versus buttercream. You're insane, Carrie had said, his voice climbing higher with each confirmation ding. You can't just cancel our entire wedding over this. I'm not, I'd replied, pulling up the guest list spreadsheet. You did. You said no Lisa, no wedding. I'm simply executing your decision. The best part was the paper trail. Every email contained the same line. Due to Mr. Mitchell's ultimatum regarding the wedding party, we must unfortunately cancel our event. Documentation. Evidence. The forensic accountant in me was practically purring. By the time I'd hit send on the final vendor email, the vintage car rental for our supposed getaway, Carrie had sunk into the chair across from me, face pale, finally understanding that I wasn't playing chicken with our future. I was ending it with the efficiency of someone who'd been trained to dismantle financial fraud schemes twice as complex as our wedding plans. The vintage car rental company's confirmation email had barely hit my screen when Carrie grabbed his phone and stormed out, slamming our front door hard enough to rattle the wedding photos we'd taken last month. I sat there in the sudden silence, laptop still warm, the reality of what I'd just done settling over me like dust after an explosion. But I wasn't finished. That evening I made pasta. Overcooked it completely, the noodles practically dissolving into mush, because my hands were shaking and I couldn't focus on something as simple as boiling water. Carrie had returned around 6, walking through the door with this practiced expression of patient understanding, like he was dealing with a toddler's tantrum. We need to talk about this rationally, he said, setting his briefcase down with deliberate calm. He'd changed into his power suit, the charcoal one he wore to board meetings when he needed to intimidate someone into submission. I served the pasta onto 2 plates, the sauce pooling around the mushy noodles like evidence of my mental state. There's nothing to discuss. You made your position clear. He sat down across from me, his movements precise and controlled. I recognized this version of him, C.O. Carey, the one who'd negotiated million-dollar deals in hostile takeovers. Grace, you're being emotional. This isn't like you. You're right, I said, twirling my fork through the disaster on my plate. The Grace you know would have cried. Would have begged you to reconsider. Would have agreed to anything to keep the wedding on track. His jaw tightened, that little muscle below his ear pulsing. Lisa and I have history, yes, but... History. I set my fork down carefully. She stole $40,000 from you. She ran off with Derek, your business partner. You spent our entire first year together calling her a soul-sucking parasite. That's not history, Carrie. That's trauma. He leaned forward, adopting what I'd privately named his TED Talk pose. Earnest, engaged, selling you something you didn't know you needed. People change, Grace. She's been through therapy. We both have. Having her as my maid of honor would be symbolic. A statement that I've truly moved past it. The laugh that escaped me wasn't pleasant. A statement. Our wedding reduced to your personal therapy session. Either Lisa is my maid of honor or there's no wedding. He delivered it like a closing argument, sitting back with the confidence of someone who'd never had their bluff called in 34 years of life. I studied his face, really looked at him for the first time in months. The entitled tilt of his chin. The way his fingers drummed against the table, already calculating my inevitable surrender. He genuinely believed I'd crumble. The wedding is already cancelled, I said quietly. I sent the last email an hour ago. Something shifted in his expression then, the CEO mask cracking. You're serious? Dead serious. I stood, leaving my untouched plate. I'll be in my office working on the financial breakdown. You should probably start checking your credit cards for any wedding-related auto payments. I spent that entire night in my home office, the one Carrie had suggested I convert to a nursery, when the time came. My wedding binder lay open beside me, 8 months of planning reduced to evidence for my new project. The laptop screen glowed in the darkness as I built my masterpiece. A comprehensive spreadsheet that would have made my forensic accounting professors weep with pride. Every expense categorized. Every vendor payment tracked. Every receipt scanned and attached. I worked with the focused intensity I'd once applied to unraveling Ponzi schemes, except this time I was documenting the financial dissolution of my own future. At 1:47 a.m., I sent the Ritz-Carlton a formal cancellation email, CCing my lawyer friend Janet for good measure. The florist followed at 2:23 a.m., the photographer at 2:56 a.m. Each email contained the same clinical language. Due to irreconcilable differences discovered during wedding planning, specifically Mr. Mitchell's non-negotiable demand regarding the wedding party composition. By 3 a.m. I'd calculated everything. Total investment, $32,000. Potential refunds with insurance, $24,800. Total loss, $7,200. Split 50-50, Carrie owed me $3,600. But that didn't account for the deposits I'd paid from my personal account before we'd combined finances for wedding planning. Adjusted for that, his share came to exactly $7,200. I color-coded each line item. Created formulas that automatically updated if any vendor modified their refund amount. Added a payment tracking column with drop-down options. Pending, partial, complete, delinquent. The accountant in me was singing. The coffee maker gurgled its fourth pot as I moved on to the guest list. 200 names, each representing someone who'd cleared their calendar, bought gifts, made plans. They deserved better than finding out through gossip. At 4 a.m. I began crafting individual emails. Not a mass blast, that felt cowardly. Each message personalized but professional. To his college friends, we regret to inform you that the wedding has been cancelled due to fundamental differences that emerged during planning. To my relatives, after careful consideration, Carrie and I have decided not to proceed with the wedding. Your support has meant everything. My phone began buzzing at 4:17 a.m. Carrie's mother. I let it go to voicemail. Then my own mother. Then numbers I didn't recognize. I turned it to silent, placed it face down and kept typing. The sun was painting the sky pink and orange when I finally hit send on the last guest notification. My eyes burned, my back ached, but I felt more alive than I had in months. Every email sent, every spreadsheet cell filled, every document saved in triplicate to the cloud. It was like performing surgery on my own life, cutting away the diseased tissue with mathematical precision. At exactly 7 a.m. the doorbell rang. I knew it would be Carrie before I even looked through the peephole. He stood there in yesterday's clothes, wrinkled and wrong, his usually perfect hair sticking up at odd angles. "You actually did it," he said when I opened the door. Not a question. A statement of disbelief. I handed him the printed invoice I'd prepared. Every line item highlighted in different colors according to payment status. "Your share is $7,200. I accept Venmo, wire transfer or certified check. Payment due within 30 days. He stared at the papers, his hands actually trembling. "This is insane, Grace. You can't invoice me for our wedding." "I'm not invoicing you for our wedding," I corrected, pouring myself another cup of coffee with steady hands. "I'm invoicing you for your half of the financial losses incurred by your ultimatum. We need to talk about this. Lisa doesn't have to." "Stop." The word came out sharper than intended. "You made your choice. Lisa or no wedding. I'm simply facilitating your decision." That's when his anger finally surfaced, replacing the shock. "You're being vindictive. Petty. This isn't the Grace I fell in love with." "You're right," I agreed. "The Grace you fell in love with would have sacrificed her self-respect to keep you happy. That Grace is gone. You'll regret this," he said, voice rising. "When you're alone and realize what you threw away." I threw away nothing. My voice remained level, professional. "Check or Venmo works fine." From my bedroom I heard movement. Marcus, who'd crashed there after I'd called him at midnight, appeared in the hallway. 6'3" of protective big brother, still in yesterday's jeans and t-shirt, looking like he'd been waiting for an excuse to intervene. Carrie's face went from red to pale. He looked between us, calculations running behind his eyes, then turned and left without another word. I stood there in my doorway, invoice carbon copy still in my hand, watching him drive away in the BMW we'd picked out together. The morning sun was fully up now, birds singing, the world continuing its rotation as if nothing had changed. Everything had changed. Marcus made coffee while I stood at my kitchen window, watching Carrie's BMW disappear around the corner. The morning felt too quiet, too normal for what had just happened. My phone vibrated on the counter. 14 missed calls, 23 texts. I left it all unread. "You should eat something," Marcus said, sliding a plate of toast toward me. "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway." I took a small bite, the bread like cardboard in my mouth. Marcus leaned against the counter, studying me with that older brother look that meant he was debating whether to push or let me process. My phone buzzed again. This time I glanced at the screen. Janet calling. "It's barely 8 in the morning," I muttered, but something made me answer. "Janet, I can't really talk right." "Grace, shut up and listen." Her voice was hushed, urgent. "I'm at the office. Carrie's here and so is Lisa." My hand tightened on the phone. "What?" "I came in early to finish the Morrison audit and they're in conference room B. The walls are thin, Grace. They're screaming at each other." I heard rustling, then Janet's breathing as she apparently moved closer. Suddenly, Lisa's voice came through, shrill and clear. "You want me to help pay for the wedding I supposedly ruined? Are you completely insane?" Carrie's response was muffled, but I caught fragments. "Told you this would happen. Your idea to push for Maid of Honor." "I'm recording this," Janet whispered. "Hold on." The next few minutes were a masterclass in relationship destruction. Through Janet's phone, I heard Lisa raging about Carrie using her as an excuse, about him being too weak to commit. Then Carrie's voice clearer now, desperate. I needed you there to prove I was over you. The whole wedding was supposed to be closure. Closure. Lisa laughed, bitter and sharp. You've been texting me every night for 6 months. You told me you still loved me last week. My legs went weak. Marcus grabbed my arm, guided me to a chair. I was confused, Carrie protested. Getting married was making me crazy. I just needed to know. You needed to mark your territory, Lisa spat. Both of us did. We're toxic, Carrie. We've always been toxic. And that poor woman was just collateral damage in our sick game. The recording cut off. Janet came back on the line. I've got about 3 more minutes recorded. I'm sending it now. Grace. I'm so sorry. After Janet hung up, I sat there staring at my phone as the audio file arrived. Marcus played it through his phone, his face darkening with each word. When it ended, he very calmly walked to my cabinet, pulled out a mug and threw it against the wall. Feel better? I asked. Little bit, yeah. My phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe accept. Is this Grace Winters? Male voice, unfamiliar, tired. Who's asking? My name's Derek Coleman. I guess I'm Lisa's ex-boyfriend now. We need to talk. The coffee shop Derek suggested was one of those aggressively neutral places. Beige walls, instrumental jazz. The kind of spot where people had awkward conversations about custody arrangements and severance packages. He was already there when I arrived, hunched over a laptop at a corner table. You're Grace, he said. It wasn't a question. You look like your Instagram photos. The ones from before you met him, I mean. You looked happier then. I sat down, unsure what to say to Lisa's boyfriend. Ex-boyfriend. I found out about them 3 days ago, Derek continued, turning his laptop toward me. Lisa left her email open. I wasn't snooping, just trying to find a dinner reservation confirmation and... He gestured at the screen. 6 months of messages. I leaned forward, reading. My stomach turned with each exchange. Carrie telling Lisa about our wedding plans but framing everything around her. Grace wants roses, but remember how you always loved peonies. Lisa responding with memories of their relationship, moments that supposedly meant nothing now but clearly meant everything. This one's from 2 months ago, Derek said, clicking to a new message. Read it. Carrie had written, once I'm married and settled, Grace will have to accept you in our lives. It'll be easier then. She won't be able to be jealous or insecure when you're officially just a friend. Lisa's response, I need to see you marry someone else to finally let go. I need to watch you commit to her so I can stop hoping. Your wedding, Derek said quietly, was supposed to be their closure ceremony. You were a prop in their psychological drama. I sat back processing this. How long were you and Lisa together? 2 years. I was going to propose next month. He laughed, bitter. I actually asked Carrie for advice about rings last week. He recommended the place where he got yours. We sat in silence for a moment, 2 people discovering they'd been supporting actors in someone else's tragedy. I'm sending you everything, Derek said, fingers flying across his keyboard. Screenshots, emails, even some photos from her phone that auto-synced to our cloud. They met up at least once a week for the past 6 months. Always in public, nothing technically crossing lines, but emotional affairs don't leave physical evidence, I finished. Exactly. My phone dinged repeatedly as files arrived. Dozens of them. Evidence of a relationship that never really ended, just went underground. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Derek closed his laptop, met my eyes directly. Because when I confronted Lisa, she tried to gaslight me. Said I was imagining things, being jealous, controlling. For about 5 minutes I actually wondered if I was crazy. Then I remembered that's what she did to Carrie when she cheated with his business partner. Pattern behavior. He stood to leave, then paused. You saved me years of my life by canceling that wedding. Thank you for being stronger than the rest of us. I drove home in a daze, my phone continuously pinging with messages I couldn't bring myself to read yet. When I pulled into my driveway, my mother's car was already there. She stood on my porch with a cardboard box, looking older than I'd noticed before. Marcus called me, she said simply. Told me what happened. Inside, she set the box on my kitchen table. These are your father's things. Some papers, letters, things I've been meaning to give you. Mom, this isn't really the time. Grace. She took my hands, her eyes filling with tears. I have to tell you something. 3 months ago I saw Carrie at the Marriott bar downtown. With a blonde woman. They were sitting very close, laughing, and she kept touching his arm. The room tilted. You saw them? And didn't tell me? I wanted to. But you seemed so happy and I thought. I hoped I was wrong. That it was a business meeting or... She pulled out an envelope from the box, my name written on it in Dad's handwriting. Your father wrote this when you started dating Carrie. He asked me to give it to you when you needed it. I think you need it now. I took the letter with shaking hands but couldn't open it. Not yet. There's more, Mom said quietly. The woman at the bar? She was wearing a necklace. A distinctive one with a butterfly pendant. You gave me one just like it for Christmas 2 years ago. Said you'd gotten a matching one for Carrie's assistant as a thank you gift. She'd been wearing the necklace I'd bought her, thinking I was being kind to my fiancé's colleague. My phone rang. Janet again. Grace, you need to check your email. My boss, Mr. Harrison, wants to meet with you. Today. It's about your job. I stared at my phone, Janet's words echoing. Mr. Harrison wanted to meet with me. Today. My old managing partner who'd warned me about leaving the firm for domestic life when I'd resigned 8 months ago. I have to go, I told my mother, already grabbing my keys. Will you be okay here? She nodded, still holding Dad's letter. Go. I'll make dinner. The drive to Harrison Knox and Associates took 15 minutes but felt like seconds. My mind raced through possibilities. Why would he want to see me now? Janet had mentioned the Morrison audit, but that wasn't my case anymore. I was pulling into the parking garage when my phone rang. Unknown number, but the area code was familiar. Carrie's apartment building. Miss Winters. A gruff voice, concerned. This is Tony, security at the Meridian. You're still listed as Mr. Mitchell's emergency contact. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Is something wrong? There's a situation. A woman, Lisa something, she's in the lobby throwing his belongings everywhere. It's 2 a.m. here in New York. I glanced at my dashboard clock. Tony must be calling from the overnight shift recording. I've got footage from earlier tonight I thought you should see. Send it to me, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. 20 seconds later, the video file arrived. I sat in my parked car watching Lisa Brennan, supposedly composed PR executive, having a complete breakdown in Carrie's luxury building lobby. She was hurling clothes from a box, screaming loud enough that residents had gathered to watch. You promised, she shrieked at Carrie, who stood frozen by the elevators. You said after the wedding, after you were married, we could finally be together properly. The security footage was clear enough to catch Carrie's face draining of color as his neighbors filmed with their phones. Lisa, please, let's go upstairs. 3 years. She threw what looked like a watch at him. 3 years of waiting for you to choose me. You said Grace was safe, boring, that marrying her would make your parents happy, but we'd have our real life after. I closed the video, unable to watch more. My phone immediately rang again, Tony calling back. Miss Winters, I'm required to file an incident report. Since you're listed as emergency contact, you'll get a copy. But I wanted you to know. Mr. Mitchell's been bringing her here for months. Always late nights. The other guards and I, we assumed, well, I'm sorry you're dealing with this. I thanked Tony, ended the call, and walked into my former office building on shaking legs. The familiar marble lobby, the same elevator that still needed maintenance on the 7th floor button. Nothing had changed except me. Mr. Harrison's assistant, Beverly, hugged me the moment I walked in. We've missed you, honey. Go on in, he's waiting. Harrison's office overlooked downtown, all glass and dark wood and power. He stood when I entered, gestured to the leather chairs. Grace. You look well, considering. Considering. Janet filled me in. The wedding cancellation. The complications. He studied me over his reading glasses. I also received a call from Derek Coleman. He says you have evidence of intentional infliction of emotional distress. I pulled out my phone, showed him the screenshots Derek had sent, the transcripts from Janet's recording. Harrison reviewed everything with the intensity that made him legendary in courtrooms. This is deliberate deception, he said finally. Fraud, essentially. Mr. Mitchell entered into wedding contracts knowing he had no intention of following through in good faith. He leaned back. I'm assigning Melissa Chin to draft an addendum to your invoice. Given this evidence, your emotional distress claim is rock solid. I'd say, $9,500 total is conservative. Mr. Harrison. Call me Richard. You're not my employee anymore, though we should discuss that too. He smiled, the rare genuine one he saved for moments that mattered. Your position, senior forensic accountant, it's still open. We've been using contractors waiting to see if you'd come back. But I'm prepared to offer you something better. Senior partner track. Your name on the letterhead within 2 years. My throat tightened. Why? Because someone who can handle this level of personal catastrophe with your precision and professionalism is exactly who I want representing this firm. Also, he added, pulling out a folder, the Morrison audit Janet's working on? It's connected to one of Lisa Brennan's PR clients. Potential money laundering. We could use your expertise. I left Harrison's office an hour later with a job offer, a legal strategy, and something I hadn't felt in months, professional purpose. But the universe wasn't done with its revelations. My phone buzzed. Text from Janet. Emergency girls meeting. My place. 6 p.m. No arguments. When I arrived at Janet's apartment that evening, I found my entire friend group assembled. Janet, of course, but also Meredith from book club, Sarah from my old gym, even Denise who'd moved to Seattle but was on video call. Intervention, Janet announced. Not the sad kind. We're finally telling you everything kind. They'd prepared a presentation. An actual PowerPoint. Red flags we saw but didn't say, read the first slide. He made you quit your job, Meredith started. Convinced you to stop going to the gym because couples should work out together, added Sarah. Remember when he threw out your power suits because they were too aggressive? Denise called from the laptop screen. Slide after slide of moments I'd rationalized, dismissed, forgiven. The time he'd shown up at our girls' night because he missed me too much. How he'd slowly replaced my friends with his approved couple friends. The way he'd convinced me that wedding planning was more important than maintaining my CPA certification. We made something, Janet said, pulling out a scrapbook. To remind you who Grace Winters actually is. Photos of me accepting the Forensic Accountant of the Year award. Newspaper clipping from when I'd testified in the Morrison embezzlement trial. My marathon medal from 2 years ago, before Carrie decided running was unfeminine. Pictures from my promotion party, the one Carrie had made me leave early because he had a headache. You disappeared, Sarah said quietly. Piece by piece you just vanished into him. The last page was a photo from 3 years ago before Carrie. I was laughing at something off camera, wearing one of my power suits, looking alive in a way I'd forgotten existed. We're taking back your wedding day, Janet announced. Already booked the rooftop bar at the Sterling. The one Carrie said was too casual for your rehearsal dinner. We're calling it your Liberation Day party. I was trying to form words to thank them when my phone rang. Unknown number again. Grace Winters. A woman's voice, formal. This is Catherine Mitchell, Carrie's mother. My friends went silent watching my face. Mrs. Mitchell. We need to meet. Tomorrow Café Luna, 2 p.m. It's about Carrie's history. Things you deserve to know. She paused. Please. Just give me an hour. I told Catherine Mitchell I'd meet her, then hung up and looked at my friends' concerned faces. I need to go, I said, though what I really needed was to be alone, to process everything that kept crashing over me in waves. Janet squeezed my hand. Call if you need us. Anytime. I drove home to find Mom had made chicken soup, Dad's recipe. We ate in comfortable silence until she pulled the cardboard box closer. There are more letters in here. Other things too. She left me alone at the kitchen table with the box. I waited until her car pulled away before reaching for the envelope with my name in Dad's careful handwriting. The paper was cream-colored, his law firm letterhead. Dated 3 months after I'd started dating Carrie. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. My dear Grace, it began. By the time you read this, I'll be gone and you'll probably be facing something that's making you question everything. I'm writing this because I see signs that worry me, and I won't be there to say these words when you need them. I had to stop vision blurring. Dad had been fighting cancer when he wrote this, knowing he had maybe 6 months left. Your young man came to dinner last week. He's charming, successful, everything a father should want for his daughter. But Grace, I watched him correct you 3 times during dinner. Small things, how you held your fork, the wine you ordered, the way you laughed at your mother's joke. Each time you adjusted yourself, made yourself smaller. Baby girl, if someone makes you smaller to feel bigger, that's not love. That's theft. The words hit like physical blows. I remembered that dinner. Carrie had been so attentive, so perfect. Dad had seemed distant and I'd thought it was the pain medication. You've always been bright, fierce, independent. Your mother says you get that from me, but we both know you surpass us both. Don't let anyone convince you that your strength is a flaw to be fixed. The right person will see your fire and want to stand beside it, not extinguish it. Trust your gut over grand gestures. Keep your own bank account, your own friends, your own dreams. A real partner won't feel threatened by your independence. They'll celebrate it. The letter went on, 2 more pages of wisdom I'd needed months ago. Or maybe I'd needed to lose myself first to understand what I'd lost. I sat in my kitchen until midnight, crying for the first time since Carrie's ultimatum. Not delicate tears, but body-shaking sobs that left me exhausted and somehow cleaner. The next morning I had appointments with vendors about refunds. The Ritz-Carlton was first. Patricia, the event coordinator, met me in the marble lobby with a folder and an expression of barely concealed relief. I'll be honest, Miss Winters, she said, leading me to a private office. When you cancelled, several of our staff members were relieved. Excuse me. Patricia hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. Mr. Mitchell and his friend Lisa Brennan, they've been meeting here regularly. Always in the bar, always for hours. Last month, she tried to change your centerpiece orders, claiming she was your wedding planner. When we verified with you, Mr. Mitchell called to apologize, said she was overly enthusiastic. My stomach turned. How often did they meet? Monthly at least. Sometimes more. Patricia pulled out a receipt folder. Your refund is already processed. Full amount minus the standard administration fee. And Miss Winters? Congratulations on dodging that bullet. The photographer, James, was even more direct when I met him at his studio. Your fiancé was condescending during the engagement shoot, he said, pulling up the contact sheets on his computer. Look at your body language in these. I leaned forward, seeing what I'd missed before. In every photo, I was slightly turned away from Carrie, shoulders hunched, smile forced. He was always touching me possessively, hand on my lower back, arm around my shoulders, fingers gripping my waist. I've been doing this 20 years, James said. I can spot a controlling relationship through my lens. I actually told my assistant I hoped you'd cancel. The florist, a sweet woman named Rosa, had her own revelation. That woman, Lisa, she called 3 times trying to change your bouquet. Insisted you'd want lilies instead of roses. When I confirmed with you, you seemed confused but agreed. Rosa pulled out her order forms. You originally wanted peonies, remember? Your favorite. But Mr. Mitchell said they were too casual for the venue. Each vendor, each revelation, another crack in the facade I'd built around my relationship. I'd been so focused on creating the perfect wedding that I'd ignored every warning sign. At 3 a.m. that night, my phone buzzed. Voicemail notification. Unknown number, but the voice was unmistakably Lisa's, slurred and desperate. Grace, it's me. I know you hate me and you should, but I need to tell you something. I orchestrated all of it. Getting back in touch with Carrie, becoming his friend, pushing to be in the wedding. I was going to object during the ceremony as a joke, but not really. I needed to mark my territory, show everyone he still loved me. But it backfired. Everything backfired. Derek left me, my company's putting me on leave because someone leaked those screenshots, and Carrie won't even answer my calls now. There was a pause, the sound of her crying. I'll pay his debt to you. All of it. The whole $7,200. Just sign an NDA saying you won't share anything else about us. Please. My career depends on reputation and this is destroying everything. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. The voicemail ended. I deleted it, then retrieved it from my trash folder. Evidence, the forensic accountant in me whispered. Always keep evidence. 2 days later, I sat in Dr. Elena Martinez's office, Marcus's therapist recommendation. Her office was warm, plants everywhere, nothing like the sterile environments I'd imagined. Tell me what brings you here, she said simply. I started with the ultimatum, but she gently guided me backward. When did I stop seeing my friends as often? When did I start dressing differently? When did my career become less important than wedding planning? He never explicitly told me to quit my job, I said, defending him reflexively before catching myself. He just made it seem like planning our future was more important. And you believe that meant leaving your career? The question hung there. Yes. I'd interpreted his subtle pressure as reasonable requests. Dr. Martinez helped me see the pattern. How each small surrender had led to bigger ones, how isolation from support systems made me dependent on his approval. Your father's death, she said gently. That was 2 months before you met Carrie? I nodded, throat tight. Grief makes us vulnerable. Someone offering security, stability, the promise of a planned future. That would have been powerfully attractive when you were mourning someone who represented safety. We talked about the woman in the scrapbook photos, the one who'd won awards and run marathons. She's still you, Dr. Martinez said. Just buried under layers of someone else's expectations. As I left her office, I felt something shifting. Not healing yet, too soon for that, but an awakening. The Grace who'd calculated vendor refunds and created vengeful spreadsheets? She was the same one who'd testified in federal court and solved million-dollar fraud cases. I sat in my car afterward, pulled out my phone and did something I hadn't done in 8 months. I called my old running group and signed up for next week's morning jog. The running group text confirmation had barely sent when my phone rang. Derek Coleman again, but this time his voice carried urgency rather than exhaustion. Can you meet me tomorrow? Same coffee shop, but bring your laptop. I found something you need to see. I agreed, then spent the rest of the evening organizing every piece of financial documentation from my relationship with Carrie. Bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts. The paper trail of 3 years laid out across my dining room table. The forensic accountant in me had awakened fully and she was hunting. Derek was already there when I arrived the next morning, his laptop open, legal pad covered in notes. He looked like he hadn't slept, but his eyes were sharp, focused. Joint credit card, he said without preamble, sliding a statement across to me. Lisa and Carrie opened it 6 months ago. They've been charging dinners, hotels. Look at this one. I studied the charge. The Rosemont Inn 2 hours north. 3 separate weekend charges over the past 4 months. Always when I'd thought Carrie was at conferences. That's not all, Derek continued, pulling up his laptop screen. Remember how Lisa suddenly had money for that new BMW? She told me it was a bonus from work. But look at this property record. The screen showed a rental property listing in Lisa's name, purchased 4 months ago. The down payment amount matched a loan Carrie had taken from his investment account. Something I'd questioned at the time, but he'd said it was for a business opportunity with his brother. They bought property together, I said, the implications hitting me. While we were planning our wedding, they were making joint investments. Derek nodded grimly. There's more. I found emails about a business venture they were planning. A consulting firm that would launch, get this, right after your honeymoon. We spent the next 3 hours building a comprehensive financial map. Derek's legal expertise combined with my accounting skills created a devastating picture of deception. Every business dinner, Carrie had expensed. Every client meeting that ran late. Every weekend conference that required him to be unreachable. We could file charges, Derek said quietly. This is fraud. They used our money to fund their relationship. My phone buzzed. Marcus texting, at the gym. Guess who just walked in? I showed Derek the message. My brother. He and Carrie belonged to the same gym. Tell him to stay calm, Derek advised, but I knew Marcus better than that. He will, I said. Marcus doesn't lose his temper. He does something worse, he tells the truth. 20 minutes later my phone rang. Not Marcus, but someone named Brad who apparently worked out at the same gym. You don't know me, Brad said, but I just watched your brother absolutely demolish some guy named Carrie, and I thought you should know it was beautiful. Was there a fight? No, that's what made it art. Brad was clearly enjoying this. Your brother was doing bench presses when Carrie approached him trying to act casual. Marcus just set down his weights, stood up, and in this completely calm voice that carried through the entire gym, started listing everything this guy did to you. I put Brad on speaker so Derek could hear. He said, real men don't need their ex-girlfriends as emotional support animals. Real men don't isolate their partners from their careers. Real men don't make women smaller to feel bigger. And real men definitely don't give ultimatums about wedding parties while secretly buying property with their ex. Derek's eyes widened at that last part. The whole gym went silent, Brad continued. Like 40 people just stopped working out to listen. Carrie tried to defend himself, but Marcus just kept going. Listed every red flag, every controlling behavior, never raised his voice once. When he finished, he picked up his weights and went back to his workout. Half the gym applauded. Carrie literally ran out. After Brad hung up, Derek and I sat in stunned silence. Then he started laughing. Not happy laughter, but the kind that comes from recognition. Your brother just did what I fantasized about doing to Lisa's father when I found out about the affairs. Pure truth, publicly delivered. We were packing up our evidence when a woman approached our table. Mid-60s, expensive suit, perfectly styled silver hair. I recognized her immediately. Catherine Mitchell, Carrie's mother. Mrs. Mitchell? She sat down uninvited, placing a leather folder on the table. I know we were supposed to meet tomorrow at Café Luna, but this couldn't wait. She looked at Derek. Mr. Coleman, I'm glad you're here too. This concerns you as well. Catherine opened the folder, revealing documents, photos, screenshots. I hired a private investigator 3 months ago. Not to spy on you, Grace, but to investigate Lisa Brennan. Why? I asked. Because this is the 3rd time my son has done this. The pattern is always the same. Successful, independent woman, whirlwind romance, gradual isolation, and then Lisa reappears. Catherine's voice was bitter. His first fiancée, Jennifer, broke things off 2 weeks before their wedding when Lisa showed up at her workplace. The second, Amanda, lasted until Lisa convinced Carrie she was having an affair. He pulled out a document. Lisa Brennan has 2 restraining orders from previous boyfriends. She targets men with money and emotional vulnerabilities. My son, unfortunately, provides both. Derek leaned forward. You're telling us your son is also a victim? Catherine's laugh was sharp. My son is a willing participant who enjoys the drama. But Lisa is a professional. Look at this. She showed us a pattern of behavior spanning 8 years. 3 other men, all wealthy, all left financially damaged after relationships with Lisa. Why are you showing us this? I asked. Because you have the power to destroy them both, and frankly they deserve it. But I'm asking you to consider letting Carrie learn this lesson without complete annihilation. Lisa, however. She pushed the folder toward me. Do whatever you think is just. She left without waiting for a response. That evening, Janet called an emergency planning meeting at her apartment. Operation Liberation Day, she'd named it. The rooftop bar is booked, she announced. The one at the Sterling that Carrie said was too casual. Perfect views, amazing cocktails, and room for 75 people. 75? I asked. Everyone who got a wedding cancellation email is invited to your freedom party instead, Meredith explained. We're calling it an unwedding. A celebration of dodging a bullet. They'd thought of everything. A DJ who specialized in empowerment anthems. A cake decorated with broken chains. Even a photographer to capture what Janet called the beginning of Grace's actual life. There's one more thing, Janet said, grinning. Remember that forensic accounting award you won 3 years ago? The one Carrie made you late to because he had a crisis that turned out to be a parking ticket. I nodded, the memory stinging. Well, Harrison called. The business community wants to honor you again. For extraordinary integrity in personal and professional conduct. They want to present it at your party. I looked around at these women who'd stood by me, who'd collected evidence of my disappearance while waiting for me to wake up. We're taking that day back, Sarah said firmly. What was supposed to be the day you lost yourself becomes the day you reclaimed everything. Derek had been quiet, but now he spoke up. I'll be there if you'll have me. Solidarity in survival, right? As they planned and plotted, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Anticipation. Not for revenge exactly, but for recognition. For the moment when everyone would see the truth laid bare. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Robert Mitchell, Carrie's father. What Catherine did today was right. Carrie needs consequences. Stop protecting him from himself. A father who failed. I stared at Robert Mitchell's text for a long moment, then deleted it. Some messages didn't need responses. They just needed to be witnessed. The planning continued around me, my friends' voices rising and falling as they debated cocktail options and playlist arrangements. But my mind drifted to what the next 48 hours would bring. 2 nights before what would have been my wedding day, I was home reviewing Derek's lawsuit documents when my doorbell rang at 10 p.m. Through the peephole, I saw Carrie swaying on my doorstep, wearing the Tom Ford suit I'd bought him for his birthday last year. His tie was crooked, his hair disheveled, and even from inside I could smell the whiskey. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Carrie. Grace. His voice was thick, words slightly slurred. I need to talk to you. It's late. Lisa won't answer my calls. He laughed, bitter and hollow. Can you believe that? She won't answer. Derek's suing us both. My parents paid your invoice to avoid the lawsuit. $9,500, Grace. They paid it an hour ago. I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket but didn't check it. That's between you and them. I chose wrong, he said, eyes red-rimmed and desperate. I see that now. Lisa and I, we're toxic. We always were. But you and me, we were stable. Safe. Safe, I repeated, the word tasting sour. I loved you, he continued, swaying slightly. Maybe not the right way, but I did love you. I studied his face. This man I'd planned to marry, who'd systematically dismantled who I was while I thanked him for his attention. You didn't choose wrong, Carrie. You chose exactly what you wanted. You just didn't expect to pay for it. His face crumpled. Please. Can we just talk? 5 minutes. No. The word came out calm, final. Go home, Carrie. Call an Uber. Don't drive like this. I started to close the door, but he pressed his palm against it. You're really going through with it? The party? On our wedding day. It's not our wedding day. It's just Saturday now. I removed his hand gently but firmly. Goodbye, Carrie. I closed the door and stood there listening to his footsteps retreat. My elderly neighbor Mrs. Chin opened her door across the hall, gave me a supportive nod, then loudly said, "About time you got rid of that controlling jerk." Several other doors opened, neighbors who'd apparently been listening, offering silent support as Carrie stumbled toward the elevator. I checked my phone. The notification was from my bank. $9,500 deposited into my account. The Mitchells had paid in full. The morning of what would have been my wedding day, I woke at 6 a.m. feeling strangely peaceful. No anxiety, no sadness, just a peculiar lightness. My phone showed 17 messages but none from Carrie or Lisa. Patricia from the Ritz-Carlton. Thinking of you today. You made the right choice. James the photographer. Would love to photograph your actual wedding someday, to someone who deserves you. Even Carrie's Aunt Margaret had sent a message. Robert told me everything. You deserved so much better than my nephew. Proud of your strength. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and booked a solo trip to Santorini. 2 weeks of Greek sunsets, wine, and solitude, funded by Carrie's Betrayal. The confirmation email felt like a promise to myself. Marcus arrived at noon to help me get ready for the party. You look good, he said simply. Like yourself again. I'd chosen a red dress. The one Carrie had said was too attention-seeking when I'd worn it to his company party. My hair was down, not in the elaborate updo we'd planned for the wedding. I looked in the mirror and saw glimpses of the woman from the scrapbook photos. The rooftop bar at the Sterling was perfect. Fairy lights strung between posts, the city skyline glittering beyond, tables arranged for mingling rather than formal seating. Janet had outdone herself, elegant but relaxed, celebratory without being vengeful. People started arriving at 6. Not the 200 we'd invited to the wedding, but 75 people who actually knew and cared about me. Derek arrived early, looking nervous but determined in a simple black suit. Solidarity in survival, he said, raising his beer. And in freedom, I replied. The cake was spectacular, 3 tiers decorated with fondant chains breaking apart. Congratulations on your unwedding written in gold script. Someone had hired a photographer who moved through the crowd capturing genuine laughter instead of posed smiles. At 8 o'clock, Marcus clinked his glass for attention. The rooftop grew quiet as he stepped forward and I saw him pull out index cards. My brother who never prepared speeches, who said public speaking was for people with something to prove. Most of you know me as Grace's protective big brother, he began, his voice carrying across the space. But tonight, I'm here as someone who watched my sister disappear piece by piece into someone else's idea of who she should be. A few people murmured agreement. 6 weeks ago, Carrie told Grace she had to accept his ex-girlfriend as maid of honor or there'd be no wedding. He expected tears, bargaining, submission. Instead, my sister looked him in the eye and said, "Then no wedding it is." The crowd stirred, some hearing the full story for the first time. To Grace, Marcus raised his glass, his voice thick with emotion, who when told no wedding, had the courage to say, "Then no wedding it is," and mean it. Who chose herself over a man who only loved the smaller version of her. Who turned the worst ultimatum into the best decision of her life. The rooftop erupted in cheers. People surrounded me with hugs, tears, congratulations on my escape. The DJ started playing Survivor by Destiny's Child, and everyone flooded the dance floor. Around 10, Janet pulled me aside with her phone. "You need to see this." She showed me a LinkedIn post from Lisa's PR firm. Brennan Communications announces the departure of Lisa Brennan, who is pursuing other opportunities. We wish her well in her future endeavors. The comments were brutal. Professionals who'd clearly heard about the scandal discussing reputation management and ethical violations. There's more, Janet scrolled to another post. Carrie's firm. Mitchell Finance announces that Senior Associate Carrie Mitchell has begun a voluntary leave of absence to focus on personal matters. The firm remains committed to maintaining the highest standards of professional conduct. Derek appeared at my shoulder. The lawsuit hit them today. Both firms got copies. Lisa's already lost 3 clients and Carrie's biggest account pulled out after someone sent them the gym video. I looked around the rooftop, at my friends dancing, my brother laughing with colleagues who'd come to support me, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond. Carrie and Lisa had destroyed themselves without my lifting a finger, beyond standing firm in my truth. "No revenge needed," I said quietly. "Just consequences." The party continued until 2 a.m. As the last guests filtered out, I stood at the railing looking over the city. Janet joined me, slightly tipsy but radiantly happy. "You know what the best part is?" she said. "This morning should have been you putting on a white dress to marry him. Instead, you're standing here free with your career back, your friends around you, and $9,500 in the bank for a Greek vacation." I smiled, feeling the truth of it settle into my bones. The best revenge really is a life well lived. "No," Janet corrected, swaying slightly. "The best revenge is refusing to shrink yourself for someone who was never worth the sacrifice." The city sparkled below us, full of infinite possibilities that were finally mine to choose. I helped Janet into her Uber, watched the taillights disappear into the night, then stood alone on the sidewalk outside the Sterling. The city was still awake at 2 a.m., lights twinkling like earthbound constellations, and for the first time in over a year, I felt completely present in my own life. 6 months passed in a blur of rebuilding. I'd returned to Harrison, Knox and Associates the Monday after my unwedding, walking through those familiar doors with my head high. The whispers followed me through the halls at first. Everyone knew the story by now, but within weeks those whispers turned to respect. The morning everything changed again, Beverly knocked on my office door. "Mr. Harrison wants to see you." "Boardroom. Now." I walked in to find the entire senior partnership assembled, 12 faces that usually meant someone was either being promoted or terminated. Harrison stood at the head of the table, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Grace Winters," he began formally, "in the past 6 months, you've recovered $3.2 million in the Morrison audit, identified fraud patterns that saved our clients another $5 million, and demonstrated what this board unanimously agrees are exceptional crisis management skills during your personal situation." Someone coughed. Everyone knew personal situation meant the wedding implosion that had somehow become legend in our professional circle. "Therefore," Harrison continued, "effective immediately, you're being elevated to senior partner. Congratulations." The room erupted in applause. My name would be on the letterhead. Harrison, Knox, Winters and Associates. The salary increase meant I'd be earning triple what Carrie made, or used to make, since I'd heard through LinkedIn he was still on indefinite leave. "There's one more thing," Harrison added as people filed out. "That pro bono program you proposed, helping women identify financial abuse in relationships? The board approved it. Full funding. You'll head it up." I stood there in the empty boardroom, looking out at the city through floor-to-ceiling windows, and thought about the woman who'd sat at this same table 18 months ago, resigning to plan a wedding. 2 weeks later I was in Santorini, standing on a terrace overlooking the caldera. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that photographers spend lifetimes trying to capture. My phone propped against a wine bottle, I video called Marcus and Mom. "Look at that view," Mom breathed through the screen. "Look at you," Marcus corrected. "You look like yourself again." "No, you look better. You look free." "I've been thinking," I said, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. "About writing a book. About everything that happened, but more than that. About recognizing emotional manipulation disguised as love. About the slow disappearance of self that happens so gradually you don't notice until you're gone." "Do it," Marcus said immediately. "Turn it into something that helps others." "Dad would be proud," Mom added softly. After the call ended, I sat on that terrace until the stars came out, Greek wine warming my chest, and started writing the first chapter on my laptop. Not about Carrie, but about the woman I'd been before him and the journey back to her. 4 months after Santorini, I was at the annual Children's Hospital Charity Gala, the kind of event I'd attended as Carrie's +1 but now attended as a senior partner and donor. I was speaking with a colleague about the pro bono program when someone cleared their throat behind me. Robert Mitchell stood there alone, looking older than I remembered. His hair had gone completely gray, deep lines etched around his eyes. "Grace, I was hoping to see you here." My colleague excused themselves, leaving us in an awkward bubble of silence. "You look well," Robert said finally. "Successful. Happy." "I am." He nodded slowly, then seemed to gather himself. "I wanted you to know, Catherine and I are divorced. Finalized last month. After everything that happened, I finally saw what she'd enabled. What I'd enabled by never standing up to either of them." I waited, sensing there was more. "Carrie's in therapy. Real therapy this time, not the performance he did before. He hit rock bottom when Lisa leaked all their messages to save her own reputation. She got a job in Miami, told everyone he'd manipulated her. He lost everything, job, reputation, you." Robert's voice carried no plea for sympathy, just tired fact. He admitted something to his therapist. The ultimatum about Lisa being maid of honor. It was a test. He wanted to see if you'd choose him over your self-respect. He never expected you to choose yourself. "But I did," I said simply. "You did. And thank God for that." Robert extended his hand and I shook it. "You saved yourself and maybe you saved him too. Sometimes people need to lose everything to learn anything." He walked away, disappearing into the crowd of black ties and evening gowns, and I realized I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, just peaceful indifference. 2 weeks later, on the exact anniversary of the day I'd canceled my wedding, I drove to Riverside Cemetery with a specific purpose. Dad's headstone stood under an oak tree, simple and dignified, just like him. "Hi, Dad," I said, sitting on the grass beside the stone. "I brought you something." From my purse, I pulled out 2 items. His letter, now framed and hanging in my office, and my engagement ring. I'd bought it back from the jeweler last week, not from nostalgia but for closure. "You were right about everything," I told the stone. "About keeping my own bank account, my own friends, my own identity. About recognizing when someone makes you smaller to feel bigger." I placed the ring on top of the headstone, where it caught the afternoon light, diamond fracturing sunbeams into tiny rainbows. "I'm not leaving this here because I'm mourning what I lost. I'm leaving it as a monument to what I've gained. I'm senior partner now. My name's on the letterhead. I'm helping other women recognize financial abuse. I'm writing a book. I ran a marathon last month, beat my personal record from before Carrie." The wind rustled through the oak leaves and I could almost hear Dad's voice. "That's my girl." "I'm Grace Winters," I said, standing and brushing grass from my skirt. "Forensic accountant, senior partner, marathon runner, future author, survivor. And I'm finally fully myself. No one's fiancé, no one's project, no one's smaller version. Just me existing in my full power." I walked away from the cemetery, leaving the ring glinting on the headstone. Let someone find it and wonder at the story. Or let it weather away to nothing. Either way, it no longer had any hold on me. That night, I stood in my apartment, the one I'd almost given up to move in with Carrie, and looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman staring back wore a red suit, had laugh lines from actual joy, and stood with her shoulders back, taking up all the space she deserved. My phone buzzed with a text from Janet. "Drinks tomorrow to celebrate your promotion? The Sterling rooftop." I smiled, typing back, "Perfect. My treat. I've got senior partner money now." If this story of ultimate revenge served cold had you cheering for Grace, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Grace simply said, "Then no wedding it is," and actually meant it. Talk about calling someone's bluff. What was your favorite moment of sweet justice? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more incredible stories of betrayal and triumph. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.